I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So the first thing on our agenda today is the consent agenda. Approval of minutes from 12/19, approval of payroll, approve of vouchers, approve and sign renewed lease for Cody Partners, approve and sign renewed lease for AirPro, and approve and allow chair to sign, excuse me, PCHPC, Park County Historical Preservation, 2023 annual report. Yes, sir.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as listed. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Next thing on our agenda is election of officers for 2024.
Madam Chair, I do want to point out what an outstanding job the current chairman has done for this past year. Attending a lot of extra meetings and especially developing a really good relationship with the staff here at the county. So I would ask, almost plead, if we have Dossie Overfield continue as our chairman for this upcoming year. That is my nomination.
Second.
And moved and seconded for me to stay. Thank you very much. Stay as chairman for this upcoming year. Any further discussion on the motion?
I just would like to add what Scott has said, that you've done an outstanding job. It is very time consuming. And, I think the time that you put into, especially like with the courthouse and a lot of the other, I think it's a great service to the community. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Congratulations.
Oh, thanks. Nominations for vice chair.
Madam Chair, I would like to nominate Scott Stewart as vice chair. Is that what it is? I do. I do also want to give you my appreciation. It's a great job that you've done as chair. It means it's not easy. I do think, I really like the way Park County in the past has rotated the chair position. It gives all the commissioners a chance to take on that workload, and I think that's very important. The fact that we've visited and you are willing, so we're not really throwing this at you. It is you have accepted it, but I do think it is important that everybody gets involved in the duties that come with that chair position, and I do appreciate all the hard work that you've done.
Thank you. Thanks.
Madam Chair, I would second Scott Stewart as the vice chair and point out that it's not really a tough job. So Dossie is usually here for all of the meetings. Maybe when the NFR kicks in, you may be in charge. And so I think it's an easy job to be vice chair.
Well, I would agree.
If Lloyd and I could do it,
somebody like
if Lloyd and I could do it, then you can do it. So.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Easy.
Congrats, Scott. Okay, those are the only two positions that we do, but we will move on then to our liaison listing. And that is where a lot of the work of the board ends up coming into play. We do all fill multiple roles as far as liaisons to different county boards and organizations. So I guess the easiest thing to do is to ask if anyone wants to change what they are doing. We'll start with the county appointed boards. Yellowstone Regional Airport is Scott Stewart. Buffalo Bill Dam Visitor is Lee. Park County Fair Advisory is Scott Mangold and myself. We share that one. Park County Historic Preservation is Scott Stewart. Library Board, Scott Mangold and I share that one. Museum Board, I do. Parks and Rec, Scott Mangold. Public Health Officer Communications, Scott Stewart. Travel Council, Lee Livingston. Weed and Pest Board is Lloyd. Matitsi Local Planning is Lloyd. And Park County Predator Management Advisory Board, Lloyd. And Cody Regional Airport and CY Air is Scott Stewart. Is there anyone that wants to make any changes on those as they're listed? Okay. Hearing nothing, we'll move on down to other committee appointments. Basin Authority, Scott Stewart. Cody Shooting Complex, Scott Stewart. Court Supervised Treatment Program, Lee Livingston. Forward Cody, I do. Health and Wellness Committee, I do. Matitsi Visitor Center is Lloyd. Powell Economic Partnership, Scott Mangold. Cody Urban Systems, I do. Powell Urban Systems, Lloyd does. And the WCCA Board of Directors is Lee Livingston. Anybody want to change anything as far as those at this point?
Well, I think, Madam Chair, since Lee's not here, we can appoint him to once more.
We can move him around a little bit.
Put them on the shooting complex.
Oh, yeah. There you go. The last ones that we have are federal cooperating agency appointments. The U.S. Forest Service, Shoshone National Forest, Lee Livingston and Lloyd do. Yellowstone National Park, Lee Livingston does, and the BLM, myself and Lloyd do. I think that's about it. So anybody want to change anything or move forward? I'm not hearing anything, so I'm assuming that means we're going to move forward with what we have.
We don't need a motion for, okay.
No, just clarification if we needed to change anything. Okay. So those will all stay the same. Okay, we have a few minutes before our next agenda item at 9:45.
These are just given.
Okay.
So the two leases are in here and then I'll see.
I'll explain that, yeah, as we get going.
One of you
Okay.
has to sign.
And somebody else.
I'll have some here for you in just a second. It's hard to write 24. Get that up for it. Okay.
Once in a while, I'll see that she had to be somewhere.
We could have that on.
3 months to 4 months. And I'd be lined up.
They say you get salaries.
I'm not supposed to do that breathing with my right.
Okay, on this one, Um, there's just mine on the front page, but then there's a little thing here. that we need. So if you'll find yours, sign that, and this is the fair board stuff.
Is on the other, yeah.
Chairman still has to sign that. too.
Underneath after you guys do.
Supposed to be physical therapy, 3 Looking in from 2. That's just to get.
You seen this? Everyone.
That's for his travel.
Yes, for the film.
Oh,
And that's a good dog.
I don't drink.
We don't need it. Because we moved him to.
That may, what you make use. It would be in, but we may not. Remember, if you make it.
The only time I turn it in is if we're out of county.
That's what really hurts. It takes a long time to beat. I told you. They send me a sheet. It's supposed to be 3 times a day, this series of exercises. Some of them are just. This helps. when you start.
It needs to go back to formal.
Those go to Pauline.
You can't because of automatic. You get
This is from last month with the fair board appointments. You've each got a thing in here for you to sign. So you sign down here. I'll sign the rest of it and stuff. But
Everybody has their own,
yes,
is what you're saying.
yes.
So Cameron, who's finally sitting here, because he represents the Cody Enterprise now.
Right. She introduced herself last month when you were gone. Yep. Good morning. Right. Ready in just a minute, Kim.
Date matter,
I just put it on the day we did it,
12/19.
12/19.
Sign yours.
Yeah, show 9:45 or 9:45 agenda item, King Delavan, Park County Planning and Zoning Assistant Director. Notice of consideration of penalties for Owens.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So this property, the owner is currently Barbara Owens of this property. It used to be George Owens, and I'll talk more about that in just a minute. This property is in the Cody local planning area. The zoning is the Sterling PUD plan unit development. History, May of 2022, a notice of violation letter was mailed to Mr. Owens, who at the time was the property owner, about an unpermitted use and nuisances on the property. This property has an address of 2 Shoshone River Drive, and it's lot 12 of the Shoshone River Estates. At the time, we'd received complaints from neighbor regarding the property, and it was apparent from an investigation that we did that an RV was being lived in, and that there was many types of and amounts of refuge accumulating on the property. The use of the RV as a residence and the refuge was a violation of the Sterling Plan Unit Development Agreement and our regs. And the RV as a residence was a violation of the Sterling PUD agreement, which my understanding is we, the county, are required to enforce. We can't enforce that. We shared the violation report with you. On July 6th of 2022, an investigation by our staff revealed that the RV had been removed. However, there was still a significant amount of refuge that remained on the property. Neighbor complaints beginning in spring 2023 indicated that the refuge continued to accumulate on the property. According to a quitclaim deed, on April 12th of 23, the property changed hands from Mr. Owens to Barbara Owens. So Ms. Owens is currently the owner of the property. On September 21st of this year, an investigation by our staff determined that refuge continued to exist and accumulate on the property. There was a significant amount of trash and junk in the backyard. Additionally, there were a number of appliances on the front yard and specifically on the driveway and in front of the house. On October 10th of this year, we sent a notice of violation letter to Barbara Owens. The letter was picked up. Delivery was later confirmed by and signed by Barbara Owens. In that letter, Ms. Owens was instructed to remove all the junk and other nuisance from the property within 15 days. On October 25th of last year, Ms. Owens called our department and reported that she had been trying to come into compliance essentially by removing refuge and junk on the property. On November 6th of last year, we conducted another investigation, and you saw those photos. Those are in photos 1 through 8. We conducted an investigation, and there seemed to be very little change to the amount of junk and refuge on the property. On November 13th, a consideration of penalties letter was mailed via certified mail to Barbara Owens. Delivery was later confirmed. And in that letter, Ms. Owens was informed that that violation hearing would be before the Board of County Commissioners on December 5th of last year. On November 24th of last year, Mr. Owens called our department and left a message. Then on November 27th of last year, our staff, me, called back Mr. Owens. Mr. Owens stated that most of the refuge on the property had been removed. All the weeds and tall grass had been mowed. He stated that the appliances had been removed or would be removed soon from the property. Mr. Owens said he would be finished with cleaning the property by November 1st. On November 30th of last year, another investigation by our staff determined that most of the refuge on the property had been removed. However, there appeared to be a clothes washer and dryer on the front driveway, appliances, and you see photos 9 through 14 showing what we saw on November 30th. At that time, we called Mr. Owens, informed him that the consideration of penalties agenda item that was scheduled with the Board of County Commissioners for December 5th had been removed. Neighbor complaints continued after November 30th. On December 7th of last year, we had another investigation. we saw that there were 3 motorized vehicles and a trailer that were located on the north and northeast side of the property. All those had current vehicle tags except one. I believe it was the SUV Ford Explorer, did not have a current license. The bus did not appear to be licensed, but it was very difficult to tell. There were some wood items that appeared to be discarded that remained in the backyard. There were no appliances that were visible in the front driveway. There were some trash bags and other items that were beside a trailer that was parked in close to or on the front driveway. And you see the photos that we took on December 7th of last year. Those are photos 15th through 20th. On November 8th, a consideration of penalties letter was mailed. Delivery was later confirmed. Ms. Owens was informed in that letter that there would be a violation hearing, consideration of penalties, today, January 2nd, 2024 at 9:45 a.m. And Madam Chair, I'll just mention, I don't know if all of you have had a chance to read, but in that PUD agreement, it talks about junk, and it's very specific. It says a property shall be maintained free of junk within view of any adjacent private property or public right-of-way. Junk includes any manufactured goods, appliances, fixtures, furniture, machinery, motor vehicles or trailers which are unlicensed, abandoned, demolished, dismantled, discarded, inoperable. And then also it talks about there shall be no waste, bottles, can, paper, rags, garbage box, crates, used lumber, building materials, and so on. So it's very specific. Happy to answer any questions that you might have.
No, I don't have any. Any other questions for Kim at this point? I will declare that this is also my neighbor. In picture number 19. That is my place. So just so you're aware, I am well aware of what's been there for 20 some years, off and on.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention something. So Mr. Owens tried to call last week. We played voice tag. I talked to Mr. Owens this morning. He said he would be unable to be here. He had a previous appointment. He said he would like to be here. He told me the bus will soon be moved, and the boat, he plans to have it licensed this spring or this summer. That was the extent of our conversation.
Yes, sir.
I have a question for staff. As you know, most of the regulations that we have somewhat are open for interpretation, and I've read them as well. And I guess I'm a little confused on the vehicles as far as the rules state something to the effect of being registered vehicles. To me, that's different than being licensed. If you own a vehicle and you have a title to it, that's how I would say, if you were the owner of it. How does planning and zoning, how are you interpreting vehicles that are unregistered?
You know, Commissioner Teal, Madam Chairman, again, I'm not sure it's up to your interpretation, but in the PUD, it talks about junk. It talks about machinery. It talks about motor vehicles or trailers. It says which are unlicensed, abandoned, demolished, dismantled, discarded, or inoperable. Unlicensed, you know, I know it appears the bus is unlicensed. The one vehicle has a tag that expired last spring. To be honest, I cannot tell you if that means unlicensed or not.
But I'm talking, if a vehicle it has to have a current license, is your interpretation, because they own it and it's used for their own personal use, or they just chose not to, that's a violation. They can't own a vehicle unless it's licensed.
This PUD says all vehicles would be considered a nuisance if they're unlicensed. And again, if it's, and I'm not an expert on tags, but the one vehicle, well, the bus I don't think has a current tag. I don't believe it has a license. The one vehicle, the SUV, has a tag, but it expired last spring. So I don't know whether that is unlicensed or not.
The one thing, and I guess I'd like to clarify with Colleen, because of the clerk's office, but my understanding, you get a new registration each year when you get your license plates. So unregistered or unlicensed to me would be over a year old, because your current registration isn't going to work for law enforcement or any of that. It's a new registration.
Understand, it doesn't really say current registration,
True.
so I can also interpret it as if you own it, it's okay. If you don't own it and don't have a registration or a title, then it is.
Hmm.
You know, then I would say that's a part of a nuisance, but as long as you own it, it doesn't, the interpretation does not say current registration.
It says
So
licensed though. Licensed.
Madam Chair, I think we're getting confused here. You have licensed and registration. Registration, current registration, obviously it has to be permitted, license, tag and everything, but we're getting confused because what he's talking about is unlicensed. So if you have a registration that's a year old, it's unlicensed. And so I think part of this PUD. correct,
Yes,
what you're
PUD.
saying is it has to be licensed, where I think the law under Wyoming law says unlicensed, you can't have more than 4 unlicensed vehicle on your property, but we're not talking about state statute, we're talking about the PUD,
Correct.
which is a violation because they're unlicensed.
That's the way I would interpret it. Commissioner?
Madam Chair, for, at least for out of your department, what needs to be done to this property to bring it up to compliance? Take all the vehicles off, get rid of all the junk that may have been accumulating, and then he would be okay, or she would be okay?
So, Madam Chair, Commissioner Mangold, from my inspection on December 7th, the trailer in the front yard, there were a number of trash bags beside it, and there were trash bags on the trailer. I would think a reasonable person would consider that to be a nuisance according to this. There appeared to be a couple pallets in the backyard, discarded wood items. I would think that would appear to be nuisances according to this PUB. There were other items in the backyard. This talks about things that have been discarded. I don't know if those are discarded or not. It would be subject to interpretation. Again, I think having that black Ford SUV currently tagged would no longer be considered a nuisance. It appears like the boat is not licensed, and I'm not sure how one goes about getting a boat license, but according to Mr. Owens, he said it's not licensed. So I think getting it licensed would be reasonable. And then having either that bus get a license or having it be removed would be reasonable. I then think, other than those items in the backyard that may or may not be discarded, again, that's subjective. I would think then the property would be in compliance with the PUD.
I think one of the other points here to look at is the fact that this is not the first time that he's been warned and asked to clean it up. And I can honestly say it happens fairly often. The wood in the back are usually old pallets and old wood, and about once a year there's a bonfire of some kind in an evening, but everything comes back, the wood and the mess that's usually out back. You know, a lot of times people will cover that with a backyard fence, and you don't have any idea what's in their backyard. And I guess that's true to a point, and then it would not be visible from the county road right away, which the PUD states is part of the deal here, that
Right.
it's not to be visible from the county road, but there's no
and-
fence.
And neighbors, Madam
And
Chair.
neighbors,
And
right.
neighbors, neighboring property owners.
Right, but like I said, I look at that backyard every day, and you know, if there's a fence there, I'm not gonna know what's there, but without that, it does get a little cumbersome, and he has gone through this before. I don't know that that just telling him to clean it up again will do any good. I don't know, I guess. We do have some of the neighbors here that are part of that PUD, as I understand it, so I can give you just a couple minutes if you want to say something. Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you.
If you'd identify yourself and please come up and use the mic.
Yes. Thank you. My name's Jeff Bales. I live at 9 Shoshone River Drive, so I'm across the street from the Owens property. I get to look at the bus and the boat every day. I've been there a little over 4 years and the bus has never moved. The boat has never moved. These are inoperable. So when you look at the PUD language, license or not, they don't work. They're inoperable. They're junk. And they've been there that long. Mr. Owens, I asked him about the bus once and he told me his son, it belongs to his son. His son parked it there and refuses to take it. When I asked him about that trailer, the fifth wheel that was out back with all the junk around it, he said that was a friend of his brother's that brought it in there and parked it and wouldn't leave. And I asked, why didn't your brother help you? He said, well, his brother was a meth cooker in Park County, moved out of state to avoid charges. This was a friend of his brother's and, he had no. So the point is there's no responsibility here of ownership of this home. Barbara Owens has a house in town. She has this house out there. She lets people squat and move in and out of this house. She doesn't go out there. She has no responsibility of ownership. George has no responsibility of ownership. They're just using this like an apartment. These aren't responsible neighbors. And just to tell you, I'm, as a ticked off neighbor, I've extended grace. I went over and mowed. I have mowed that property for them. I have sprayed the weeds for them. I've pulled weeds. I've weed whacked. In fact, I was manually pulling weeds out at the front sidewalk. George brought a chair out and sat and chatted with me, told me what a player he is, and made it clear that he doesn't pull weeds. Chumps pull weeds. So I'm here to tell you, this isn't going to stop. These are folks that are just slow walking this. They're doing minimal compliance. They're going to keep this up. There's a line of neighbors that'll be here complaining on and on until you guys take some serious action. And I mean, it's eating up resources of your staff and your time at the agenda here. We'll be here again. And I think it really needs some serious consequences for this to have a good, solid solution. I've tried to help. I've tried to call Barbara 4 times. She doesn't answer to see if I could help her. I saw that it went up for foreclosure at one time and I wanted to help out. I've extended the grace. So I'm here with a clear conscience telling you I got taken because George was going to pay for the fuel and the weed spray. And he stiffed me on that. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was actually helping him dodge the bullet because a neighbor had complained without my knowledge. And I cleaned it up for him. I picked up trash. I did what a neighbor would do to help someone that's struggling. These aren't people that are struggling with good intention. These are people that are just avoiding responsibility and need to be held accountable. We shouldn't enable this anymore. There's probably a lot more I could say, and I appreciate your time on this. I appreciate that you got the meth trailer out of there. And I was a little disappointed when this didn't get on your December agenda because I think it needs serious action. I think the vehicles, in my opinion, for compliance, yeah, you can talk about pallets or junk out there, but that bus, for me, that's at least 50% of the problem. I've been there 4 years and it's never moved. It's not gonna move until, and come on, a responsible homeowner mows their lawn, takes care of their property as part of home ownership. That's not how this is being viewed by the Owens clan. This is just a property that's got they've had it for a long time. The mortgage is cheap. Barbara's going to hang on to it and let these kids in and out, whoever. And so nobody's responsible for it. And the owner needs to be held responsible. Thank you.
I will explain pulling it off the agenda in December really quickly, because they had made the moves to move the appliances in the initial pictures that we saw were significantly better. I said, okay, our whole role is to try to get people just to come into compliance, not fine people if we can help it. And so I made the decision, all right, let's give them the opportunity, but it's passed.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is there time for?
Just for real quickly, if you would, we're running up against our,
I'll make it very quick.
okay.
My name is Mike Roberts. I live at 20 Shoshone River Drive, so I'm a few doors up the road. You said compliance is the goal, and I'll bet you everybody here has that same goal. That's all I care about, really. And I think at some point you have to ask, are the things that we're doing working? The promises that aren't kept and slip deadlines aren't getting it done. So I think it's maybe time for something different in order to achieve compliance. And I think along with compliance, enforcement is very important. We had another issue that you folks dealt with. Would have been 7 months ago. You were considering the case of Mr. Randy Loberg, who operated and well still does an Airbnb out of his place. After the hearing where you denied his appeal, you know, the answer was no, you can't do that. So he went home and ran an Airbnb for 4 more months with pretty high occupancy rate because there wasn't enforcement. So my request is, if you do take any kind of action, and I'm not here to see George fined, I just want to see the place cleaned up. If you do take some sort of action, I hope that there would be enforcement and not just depend on neighbors to call, but since you've got a track record, you're in the middle of this case, I would hope that you would see it reasonable to not wait for a neighbor to complain and not ask us to do that, because that just pits neighbor against neighbor, that, you know, asking neighbors to snitch on another. I would hope that, you know, that you'd say 30 days, 45, whatever it is reasonable. Put it on the calendar and say, we're going to go out and inspect. We're not going to wait for a neighbor to call. So that's all. Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Okay. Pleasure of the board.
Madam Chair, I think that this can's been kicked down the road too long. This has been an ongoing issue that it's not getting any better. And so what I would do is, I'm not sure that the proper way to go about this, but that we would, and I don't know if you want a motion on this. I would feel that we need to impose some kind of penalties of some sort to ensure it gets done. This kicking the can down the road is not working for this individual, and it hasn't for a long time. I mean, obviously with my background, I know a little bit about this place and stuff, and I would make a motion that we defer to the county attorney about how we would go about the penalty phase. I know we can't really set a fine, so to speak, without the courts being involved. But I would say that I would make a motion that we deal with this as soon as we can, as far as our communication with the county attorney, and impose some kind of penalties, whether it's, and it's kind of a long-winded motion, I guess, but I think we have to defer to the county attorney about the legalities of how we do this. But I don't think we give Mr. Owens another chance. I think we impose some kind of a deadline or fine. And I'm not sure.
Okay. In your motion, are you talking about both things? Give him a deadline and a fine amount?
Oh, I think we give him a deadline. Okay, let me rephrase this. What's today?
The second.
Today is the 2nd of January,
The 2nd?
2024.
I say we give Mr. Owens till February 1st to come into compliance. And if that doesn't happen, we start imposing a fine of, or we can't really set.
We could suggest a fine.
I would suggest a fine of $500 a week if he doesn't come into compliance by February 1st.
And Madam Chair, just so on record, to my knowledge, the property owner is still Ms. Owens. Barbara
Okay.
Owens is the property owner.
This would be directed at the property owner.
Correct.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Madam Chair, I will second for discussion.
Okay.
I want to add the PUDs that we are faced with are I have a different acronym for them. they're a lot like county imposed covenants and which were in homeowners association subdivisions that we're requesting that you put together a covenants or an improvement of which we don't get involved with for reasons just like this. It's more of a civil issue. However, the county did create PUDs. Unfortunately, I didn't create them, and this board didn't, but we do have to enforce them. In addition to Commissioner Stewart's motion, I would like to see the county attorney look into something that you can impose all the fines you want, but you can't get blood out of a turnip. So in the past, we've imposed fines that we could never collect. And I want to know if there is a way that we can put with those fines, ask the court to put a lien on the property. So that they just can't up and sell the damn thing before they could pay the fines, which has happened to us in the past, with the county never receiving anything for their work in the trying to clean up the mess.
Okay, rather than that be part of Commissioner Stewart's motion, can I just meet with the county attorney?
I'm willing with that, yes, but I would like that pushed to the point that we do
We have
go
some-
beyond the fine amount of a way of putting it on a lien on the property. I don't know if that can be done, but I
Right,
would.
we'll have to check statute, but okay.
Madam Chair, this isn't the only property, in the county that we've had number of complaints about, and basically even around the Powell area, the comment I get is, well, there's no teeth to what the county tells someone to do, and sometimes people just dismiss us. I think for the fine imposed, it most likely will have to go before a judge, and this would be a suggestion that we are making, and hopefully the wheels can turn by February 1st to get this in order. But I think that this would send a message, and I think that a fine should be put together, and I think this will be an opportunity for us to maybe clean up some of these properties, because I do feel for the neighbors, and I think that if we start doing something and putting some teeth in it, that might clean up a lot more properties than just the Owens property.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor. The motion would be to defer to the county attorney to impose penalties and have a deadline of February 1st to come into compliance, and the penalty suggested of $500 a week. Is that your motion?
Correct.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Okay, I will work with the county attorney and see what we can get done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for leaving.
Okay, the next thing on our agenda is our audit report, presentation via Zoom. I think we are,
See you.
is he on? Alex, are you unmuted?
I am. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Do you guys have like a computer screen in there? Can I share my screen?
Yes, you can. We can
Okay.
see it.
Okay, sounds good. Let me go for it. Is this big enough? You want it to be enlarged, or
No, that works fine. I think everybody can see that.
that looks
Yep.
great?
We're good.
Okay, well, just hope everybody had a good New Year and Christmas, and so yeah, we'll go through our audit report, which we do every year. I'll go through the few different reports that we issue, which is essentially attachments to your financial statements that are your numbers. We know that these financial statements, they're over 50, 60, 70 pages long. So there's a lot of information in there. Unless you really want me to read the whole report, I'm just going to touch on the highlights. So Um, I'm gonna go through our first report that we issue, which is our opinion over the financial statements. So if you want to join with me, if you have it, or you can follow along to page 1. So this is our report over the financial statements. So first off, we have our opinion. This first paragraph it's a description of, okay, what are we giving our opinion over? And it's the financial statements. There's a lot of different things going on here, but essentially, there's your face of the financial statements, which is gonna be like the balance sheet, your income statement, your cash flow statement, and then also the notes to those financial statements. And then there's also supplementary information on top of that. So this is just for the face of the financial statements. And this second paragraph is our actual opinion. And we say in our opinion, the accompanying financial statements present fairly in all material respects. So in normal language, we call that just a clean opinion, which is always something you guys are striving for. So always good to hear that. After all that, so that's really the meat and potatoes. After all that, it gets into kind of how we come up with our opinion. It talks about what the basis of accounting is. There is this unusual, it's not unusual, but it's like something we like to point out that's significant that happened during the year. It's this change in accounting principle. So during the new fiscal year for effective fiscal year 23, the GASB came out with a new standard, which was statement number 96, which is the accounting over subscription-based information technology. Essentially, this is your software that you're leasing or that you're licensing. And I'll get into the details of that later, but that's what that's commenting on. It talks about the responsibilities of management over the financial statements. And in short, management, their responsibility is over the financial statements. At the end of the audit, they sign up what's called a representation letter. They take full responsibility for all the numbers herein. These are not our numbers. These are actually your numbers that we are just issuing an opinion over whether they're correct or not. Then in the next kind of section, it talks about, okay, what do the auditors actually do? So our full job is to issue an opinion. We give what's called reasonable assurance. We don't give absolute assurance because the reason is it's not a cost benefit for us to go through every single little transaction. We're not required to go through and try to find any issues of fraud, right? So a lot of people might get that confused as, hey, if we find fraud, we are required to report it, but we're not required to design procedures to find those types of issues. So just to kind of clarify there, we did not obviously find any fraud during the year, but I will get into any of our findings a little bit later. So down below, it kind of talks about maybe some specifics that we do as part of our audit to be able to reach our opinion. We spent hundreds of hours. We had over 9-10 staff members on your job this year. That went really well. We perform risk assessments. We do detailed procedures such as send confirmations to your banks. We send confirmations to your customers, to the state. We test multiple individual transactions for purchasing. We look at the invoice. We make sure they're properly approved. We make sure that they're recorded in the right period and into the right account. So a lot goes into verification that you're actually reporting and approving all these transactions. So with all that, we're able to, give ourselves assurance that these financial statements that you presented to us are properly stated. So that's in short. Down below, it talks about any required supplemental information that you present that we'll go over later. And then there's not required supplemental, but additional supplemental information that you have chosen to include in this report that we talk about later too. This last paragraph talks about we call it in short, an internal control report. We have a report because you're a government entity. We're required to do a few extra procedures over the analyzation of your actual internal controls. So we have a report that we'll go over later that talks about that process. So any questions on the financial report?
I don't think so
Okay.
at this point. Okay.
If not, I'll move forward. Jump into some of the financial highlights. And if you can follow me to page 8, if you have it in front of you. So if you're going through these financial statements, they can be a little bit confusing because there's a ton of different bases of accounting that we're required to present that can make it really confusing for those that are not familiar with accounting or financial statements. So in short, this statement right here is essentially like an income statement for your governmental funds, which are these funds presented here. You got your general fund, county road construction fund, your ARPA grant fund, your E911. So what I do like to focus on as I start at the bottom, you can see here your net income or your change in your fund balance for the current year. If you're comparing this to the prior year, this increased by about $3 million. So how did we get there? First, how does the total revenues compare? Your total revenues from the prior year increased by $4.7 million, which was mainly because of your taxes. Your tax revenue went up by $4.6 million. Then also because of all the increase in the interest rates, your interest income went from increased by about $600,000. So that's pretty nice right now at the moment with the rates that we're seeing. So, however, your expenditures also did go up. So your revenues went up by 4.7, your net income went up by 3, meaning your total expenditures did also increase. The biggest component of the increase of the $2.4 million in this total expenditure section was because of your capital outlays. So these are purchases for assets that have a useful life of greater than 1 year. Last year was about $2 million. This year it's $5 million. Some of the other kind of highlights is the public works went down by $1.5 million. A lot of that is just because some of the current year expenditures were associated with capital outlays. So we have this reclass down from this section down into this $5 million here. The other highlight is that the majority of the other increase is due to your payroll expense increase, which increased by $1.1 million from the prior year. So that's the general fund. Other kind of significant changes from the prior year in all these funds is you obviously have spent some of this ARPA funds. You spent $2.3 million during the current year. And up above in 2 pages prior, we'll talk about how much do you have left to spend after fiscal year 23. So what you have in the bank is almost $9 million for ARPA. We have some accrued expenses. So essentially what you had left to spend at the end of fiscal year 23 was an additional $8.9 million. So, and I'm sure you're all aware of that and you're kind of planning on how you're going to be spending that going forward. Hopefully.
Oh, we have a plan.
Okay, good. But yeah, so those are the highlights of your governmental funds. Your enterprise funds, which is going to be more of your, it's just your landfill essentially. So yeah, if we're looking at a comparison to the prior year on your income statement, is here's your ending. You still have a loss of $188,000. However, last year there was a loss of $1.6 million. So that's actually an increase of 1.4. And the biggest reasons for that is your charges for service went up by about $400,000. You had a decrease to your repairs and maintenance by about 128. You had a decrease in your professional fees by about $146,000. And then the other biggest piece is this change in your post-closure and closure liability expense. This is just something that fluctuates depending on the usage and the closure of those landfill. So it's a non-cash item. However, it does impact on an accrual basis on your financial statements. This last year had this decreased by $490,000. So this expense was quite a bit higher last year, causing this total expenditures to decrease in total from all those different components by $800,000. So you had a little bit of an increase in your revenues, quite a large decrease in your expenses, which is causing this loss to go down from the prior year. So, and you can see you still had transfers out. So if you didn't have those transfers out, you get closer to like $100,000. Well, pretty close to break even there. So any questions on that statement?
Anything? I think we're okay.
Okay. Just moving along. If you're not super familiar with the financial statement, here's a cash flow statement for the enterprise funds and your proprietary funds. This is a statement of fiduciary net position. This is all of the tax revenue that being brought in through the county that you're dispersing to other entities during the year. Tax collections, which is the biggest piece of it, had $86.2 million collected, and you spent out that amount during the year too. After that, it's the notes to the financial statements. If you're not familiar with the notes, this is just supplemental information, kind of gives further detail, background on the entity, on the balance sheet items. So if you do want to go through that, I would just, do that in your own time. I'm not going to kind of go into the details, but if you do have questions on your scanning through some of the stuff that I'm not covering, feel free to shoot me an email. You can send it through Barb or Colleen and they can forward it on to me. So that's always an option if you kind of don't comprehend something that you're going through later. So here's all the notes. One thing I would like to talk about is the budget to actual on your general fund. You can see your total budgeted expenditures was $2.9 million, or almost 30 million, and you spent 26.5. So that's, a good thing. You've stayed in line with state statute. You didn't have any overspends there. And then the last supplemental schedule I do like to touch on is your CFA, which is your schedule of federal expenditures. And that is going to be starting with page 43. So it goes through each federal department that passes through money. A lot of it gets passed through the state, and then how much you have not received, but it's how much you spend. So that's what we determine if you qualify for a single audit or not, is the spending of the funds, not the reception of the funds. So if you go down to page 2, you can see during the year you have spent $2.8 million. So if you spend over $750,000, you're required to get a single audit compliance audit. And we don't test every program. We test only the major programs. And you just had one during the year. It was this coronavirus state and local recovery funds, which was kind of expected. You had spent 1.786 on that during the year. And then we'll go over, we actually issue a report as to whether you were compliant over that major program or not. So just kind of scooting forward here. These are the final 2 reports that we issue. The one, as I described earlier, is over the internal controls. And we also, I just like to make this clear that we issue this report not to actually tell you or issue an opinion whether your internal controls are operating effectively or not. We are just required to analyze, review, gain an understanding of those internal controls. And then if we find some deficiencies in those internal controls that we consider to be significant or material, we will report those in our schedule of findings. And we're happy to announce that we did not have any of those. We do find little things here and there, but we're just going to communicate those to management. We don't feel like any of the ones that we did find were significant enough to be included in the report. So no findings this year, which is great. Jumping forward to the next report, which is our report over uniform guidance. It's the single audit. We issue an opinion whether you complied in all material respects with that major program that I discussed earlier. And in the second paragraph here in this report, it does say, we believe that the county did comply in all material respects with the compliance requirements referred to for the major programs. So that's also a clean opinion. And we do review your controls over in place. We do a lot of detailed testing to make sure that you spent the money in accordance with compliance. And we did not have any findings in accordance with a single audit this year either. So I think that's been a first for the last few years. So it's always good to kind of see a clean report. The last thing is this is schedule of findings. The first page or section talks about, it's just a summary. Hey, did we have any findings? No, 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 no. Did we have any findings over the federal awards? No, no. Was there any findings in accordance with this, which is compliance? And there was no. So yeah, I think that's always a good thing to kind of see out there. And I think that's pretty much all I had for you. The other only comment I would like to talk about is, I know we've talked about in the past the search and rescue, right? And they have made some improvements. So they've created a separate board, which I believe you're all aware of. And initially, when we jumped in the current year audit, it still felt like you had control over that board and it should be included as a component unit, just like your library is, your weed and pest. So that was the initial plan, but towards the end of the audit, we kind of got into some of the details. They do have their own board. You don't have control over them. The only thing was one of the staff of the county, maybe even a couple of them, still had access to the bank accounts for Search and Rescue Foundation. So all we did was recommend you remove those two as signers. Then they don't have access to any of the assets. And then it's a completely separate entity. The board makes all of their decisions. They approve all of their transactions. Therefore, at that point, they don't qualify or meet the criteria for component unit, in our opinion. So they're now going to be totally excluded from the audit of the county. So that's kind of where we fell, and that's the results of that. So you shouldn't hear pretty much anything else about search and rescue besides the Park County search and rescue portion that you support. So.
Okay.
Yeah, any questions? That's all I have for you.
Any questions from the commissioners? No? Well, thank you. Appreciate the clean audit. Certainly kudos to our staff,
Yeah.
Pauline and Barb and Steve and Brian, everybody that keeps track of all this. Appreciate it. So thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
for your work.
Yeah, thank you too. Yeah, Barb, Colleen, and all their staff and Steve, like they do a really good job. So we appreciate their work.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you guys. Am I good to go?
I think so.
Okay,
All right.
awesome. Hope you guys
Right.
have a good year.
Happy New Year to you.
All right, take care.
Thanks. Good job, guys. Good
I
job.
do have a question, not necessarily for him.
Okay.
I know we're required to do this audit every year.
Correct.
Do how much does it cost and are we following our procurement policy can we hire whoever we want?
Correct. No, this year we'll probably have to go out with an RFP. Hopefully we'll get them back, because we work well, but we'll see what that brings us. And it costs us roughly $55,000 a year for them to do that. I think we pay them like twice, like a 20 and a 30,000, something like that. So this is our third year of using it.
And we usually do a 3-year RFP.
Okay,
And actually, so we did it 3 years. then COVID hit
Mhm.
and we brought them back for another 3 years.
Okay.
So we will actually put out for RFP this spring.
I think they've done a great job for us. I'm just
Mhm.
wondering,
Yep, we follow the procurement.
Okay.
Yep.
because we do probably have CPAs within the big one, in Park County that could do this as well. Is there a rule against that?
Probably not so much anymore. Stein and Bus doesn't do it anymore.
They used to.
Yeah,
Powell
So-
used to do it. There was somebody in Powell that did it too,
Chairman, there's no locals that want to do audit work anymore.
but, okay.
No local firms want to do audit work. All of our bids came from either Denver or Logan, where they're at.
And
Well, as long as they're given a chance, that's all
Yeah.
I'm concerned about.
there's a lander group, I think, that can still bid on things, or that had been up until the last couple of years.
well, these guys are located in Sheridan. Logan, Utah is their main office, but
Okay.
they have Rock Springs and Sheridan, is it Rock Springs?
Gillette.
And
Gillette.
Gillette.
Okay, okay.
Madam Chair, James Sickman.
He used to do some,
Oh,
Sefton used to, yeah.
I think he did Cody's too.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They used to, but government audits have gotten so complicated that keeping that staff up to date on stuff is expensive.
Yeah.
Anything else? Or are we on break? Okay, we'll take a break. We're back at 10:50.
Who's up? Hey, Steve. Who's the two employees on staff? I know Bill Brown with Search and Rescue.
Someone really close to you.
Huh?
Someone really close to you.
Oh, that crook?
Yeah, crook.
Well,
That other steward.
see, I was never on that.
kind of watch online, but so I can see the distance. I don't want to be here when you're here.
He's been stirring up my life for way too many years.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Well,
Jeez.
yeah, on both ends.
Yeah. So let's try that real quick, please.
I got him blocked.
Oh.
I'm a block, so I get.
Why am I not doing that?
Bobby, thanks for the good work with the audit stuff.
You
Appreciate that.
goes well.
Yeah, it looks good. They just did the report to us and
Said everything looked really good except the library. There was a whole lot of questions.
give it a year. We'll see where we're at.
No, not usually all.
He probably went up to the workroom.
All right,
See upstairs,
he's upstairs.
wondering where everybody is.
Wonder where everybody's at. Yeah, see, where is it?
And he's our sheriff.
Well,
Yeah, and his brother's our commissioner.
in all honesty, our last meeting with him was upstairs, but
It's like one time when, Bill Brewer became a commissioner after he retired from sheriff, had to get our picture taken and he looked at Brian and I, Bill looked at him and goes, so to think these two kids are running the county. The way he used to chase us.
sorry about that.
I had never been in my office till I left.
Oh, it's all right. If you want to go ahead and come up to the table and I don't know, Bobby, your hands or all three of you, whatever, if you want to.
We'll comment as needed.
Okay. Just don't forget to use the mic. The next thing on our agenda has to do with the Park County Policy Manual and the holiday pay discussion. And I think we all realized at the end of last month, we had put in an additional 4 hours on December 24th when we approved the policy manual in July. And we listed the 24th as an 8-hour holiday, provided it fell Monday through Friday. And we did not have any kind of acknowledgement for people that are not Monday through Friday workers within the county. So it jumped out fairly quickly. When this year happens to be one that's the 24th was on a Sunday. So there would be no compensation for the 24th for county employees under normal circumstances on the Monday through Friday. So Sheriff Stewart brought us the information that said this doesn't really work too fair for his people that had to work on that day anyway. So we're trying to find a solution, and he and I and Bobby had a conversation last week looking at options and how we could word things and try to not make the policy manual any more confusing than it already is when it comes to this type of a thing. And he had some thoughts, and I'm not sure where we are if you found out things that how it's handled differently in some other places.
Yes, we've had situations like this when I worked for the state that, say, for instance, with the weather closures down in Cheyenne. Whenever officers were closed at one location and not another, that administrative leave was granted. More or less a comp time, but just on a 1-for-1 basis. So in other words, if the home office was shut down for 8 hours for snow or whatever, or holiday, then the other remaining offices would get 8 hours of admin leave or administrative leave to be used at the employee's convenience. Beyond that, just compensated them for the time off the other employees received. With this one here with the holiday, I don't know how to handle this one. I mean, like say that it sounds like there was some administrative time granted before, some vacation leave granted previously to my taking over. But was there like a 4-hour Christmas Eve granted or something along that line, but
Bobby, can you give us a little bit of history on the initial 4 hours? Because again, that only happened on a Monday through Friday basis. Was there?
So,
We need to use the mic, maybe, so Colleen can get minutes.
So I'm thinking last year, let's see. I wasn't able to access the files, but I think we did not do anything for it because it fell on a Saturday. Is that
Okay.
right?
Probably.
But like in the past, like when like Veterans Day fell on a Saturday and we observed it on Friday for everybody. And the law enforcement, if they worked, they got to pick which day, Friday or Saturday, to get paid the vacation time for.
Okay.
So it wasn't like they lost anything. They didn't get paid for 2 days. They got paid for one, so they got to pick.
Okay. But in this case, with the 24th falling on a Sunday this year, and we had some law enforcement officers that obviously worked or had to work. The way the book reads right now, there would be nothing compensated for that, correct?
Correct, because it would be observed on that Monday, which is already a holiday. So
Right.
This is kind of a unique situation where it
Mhm.
fell like that.
But they did get compensated for Monday, correct? All of,
Yes.
Okay.
They will.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if the administrative leave is something that we want to look at because this is gonna happen every few years. I mean, it's not gonna be in effect every year because it's gonna roll with the Monday through Friday situation. A lot of years they will get both days if they were scheduled to work both days, then that'll take care of itself Monday through Friday. But we will have to worry about the years that it happens on a weekend. The administration leave is also a conversation that's come up in the past. If the commissioners remember correctly, we have this happen every once in a while. Even with landfill, when on July 4th, they're asked to work because the city situation of having to get rid of trash on that day. However, all of the other employees get that day off plus holiday pay, and the landfill guys get the holiday pay on the one day, but have to work, get time and a half, I'm assuming, because it would be overtime. But there are some scenarios where this could come into play in other circumstances. It's not something that we would specifically say what it could be used for at this point, that it is available decision for the commissioners if something like this comes into play.
Madam Chair, I can think of one instance that I know really caused problems within the sheriff's office when I was there, when the courthouse shut down because of weather and everybody got compensated 4 hours and the SO guys didn't get compensated. And it was a very, very ugly situation to think that, people got 4 hours of free time and these guys were working the 4 hours. So I think it's something that needs to be addressed and not just for the SO, but for road and bridge when they are out plowing on a weekend or whatever they have to do. So I think it's something that we should address.
Go ahead.
Madam Chairman, so Bobby and I were talking about this on Friday. There are specific departments, landfill Monday through Saturday is their normal working schedule. Sheriff's office Sunday to Saturday, 24/7. And that would include your road deputies, your jail, dispatch. What about cooks? Are they?
the cooks would work on that day.
They would work, they would work a limited schedule compared to road deputies, jail, dispatch, but still Sunday to Saturday.
Mhm.
Road and bridge, you got Monday to Thursday, but then you've got call out. So you'd need, and then obviously our regular office staff would be just Monday through Friday for a regular work schedule. I guess we had talked about a long-term solution to kind of work through this one more time with these specific carve-outs for landfill, the sheriff's department, road and bridge. I think your regular office staff is already covered here, but the specific carve-outs for those three departments might be something that, if you make a decision today that it's a temporary decision And then we work through a long-term solution that actually gets to paper and gets into the policy. Just a thought that we had on Friday when we were talking about this.
So if we're talking about a temporary solution, we could make the decision to pay those who worked on the 24th, that holiday pay value, and work on a cleanup policy to correct or enhance this in our policy manual. Is that what you're thinking is possible?
Madam Chairman, I think that's a issue for you and your board to solve.
Thoughts?
What we're asking here, or I guess the concern is the fact that the people that were working on the 24th just got straight time for their duty. I think it's absolute that they should be paid time and a half holiday, which is holiday pay is time and a half. Is that correct? Or is it double time?
It's time and a
Time and a
half.
half. Absolutely. I mean, why can't that be a long term and on right now, fix it that and put it in our policy that way? I don't, that just seems right.
We don't have a wording situation right now to take care of that shift
Well, that's
type
fine.
stuff, but
We can fix that.
I guess if we want to take care of it temporarily right now and then have them work up a policy that will work for those 4 areas of the county that are not Monday, Friday.
Yeah.
Necessarily.
Madam Chair, and just to clarify, I think where the employees had the issue is on page 23 of the policy manual. It actually shows 2 days for Thanksgiving and 2 days for Christmas. And I think they're looking at the black and white of that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we didn't clarify that the 24th was a if at times. So yeah, we do need, Bobby and I talked about that. We do need to fix that. Just in writing, so everybody understands that even on regular county employees, that 24th is an if. Okay.
And yeah, I think it's only fair. I mean, if they have to work, I know that there was maybe some savings since the 24th landed on a Saturday. We didn't have, regular staff in, during that time, but people who have to work, and it's a recognized holiday. I think it's only fair. So I don't know if you want to do it piecemeal by, who out of your department was actually working on that day. Go by each individual case, but until, we get a change in the policy manual, I think we should be able to pay, the people who did have to work.
Madam Chair, I think also moving forward with the policy change, I think for road and bridge and landfill, anybody that they have their own separate kind of call out, if you will, and they know ahead of time. But if they're called out on Christmas Day, they should be getting at least time and a half. I mean, just.
I think they
Which
do.
they do.
Yeah, they do.
And they do.
Yeah.
So that we don't have an issue with road and bridge. Okay,
Well,
I understood we did.
Well, it just depends on where the 24th falls and if they end up working on that Saturday or Sunday.
Well, that would be
That
a
would add
holiday. It
to
would
it.
be just like
Right.
being.
That's
called
what
out
we're
on
trying to
Christmas.
work.
Oh, okay. Well, I think that's how it should read is whatever holidays we recognize, if you have to work them, you're paid time and a half,
Could be.
whether it's a call out or your regular scheduled duty.
The only real difference in this situation is the 24th is an if. It's a Monday through Friday holiday. It's not a weekend on the normal employees, because the normal employees get no compensation for Saturday or Sunday for that holiday. If the 24th falls during the week. So holiday falls on the weekend, sorry, and they work all week. So that's how the wording's a little touchy, but we'll figure out how to make it happen. So is there a motion to correct or pay those that worked on the 24th this year through law enforcement and work on an updated policy to correct this before next year?
Second,
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
aye.
Unopposed, motion passes. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the owner of this property and the applicant is Leslie Rose. The zoning for this property is GR5. The planning area is the lower South Fork. We did receive a final plat application from Ms. Rose on November 29th of last year. And then we received a revised final plat on December 27th of 2023. The requested action is the applicant requests approval of this subdivision And it would vacate lot 2 of the Oliver Simple subdivision 102 and create a 2-lot subdivision. One lot will be 10.37 acres and one lot will be 14.4 acres. Each will be for residential use. As I mentioned, the ownership is Leslie Rose. And you see that revised final plat in figure 1, Madam Chair. The location of this property is shown in figure 2. It's approximately 6 miles southwest of Cody, and it's approximately 660 feet south of Highway 291. It's on the west side of County Road 6RT. The zoning district, as I mentioned, is GR5, and the lot sizes as proposed are consistent with that zoning district. In terms of site characteristics, we have a topo map that we provided in our staff report. That's in figure 3, and it shows a little change in elevation. Also, proposed lot 1 and proposed lot 2 are developed. Each have an existing residence, some outbuildings, and irrigated pasture land. And there is a private indoor riding arena situated on proposed lot 2. And that, as you know, that does have an SUP associated with it. In terms of neighboring land use, we show you in figure 4. Neighboring land uses are primary residential and residential vacant land, and there is a SUP that is to the southeast of this property. In terms of municipal review, the property is not within a mile of any municipality, so that review is not required. Public hearing is not required for final plat review. And we received no public comments. So the Board of County Commissioners reviewed this sketch plan for this subdivision on February 21st of last year. There were a number of conditions. They were in resolution 2023-12. I'll just briefly mention some of those conditions. Number 2 was a comment back review and recommendations from the Lakeview Irrigation District regarding their water distribution plan. The applicant has provided an approved agreement from the Lakeview Irrigation Plan regarding the water distribution plan. And we did receive an email from Mary Reed last Thursday, who she represents Lakeview. And she said that the district is satisfied with the infrastructure on the property, and they have signed, the irrigation district has signed the water distribution plan. They did that after the December meeting. Number 3 of the Board of County Commissioners approval of the sketch plan was an appropriate subdivision improvements agreement addressing all applicable required improvements, if applicable. And so our comment to that is the irrigation improvements that would be needed to satisfy that, they have been installed. So essentially, there is no need for subdivision improvements agreement because those irrigation improvements have been made. And I believe those were the only improvements that were necessary. Number 4 of the Board of County Commissioners approval talked about a draft homeowner association agreement if necessary. And our response is there's no shared improvements that exist, therefore that condition is not necessary. Your 5th condition with the sketch plan was water wells permitted by the state of Wyoming, and that note is on the plat. Your 6th condition was in regard to the Wyoming Right to Farm and Ranch Act. That notice is on the final plat, so that condition has been met. And again, the water well condition just before it, that's been met. Those really were the only conditions we felt worth mentioning. Final plat review that occurred on December 7th of last year. There were some corrections and changes, and then we did get a revised final plat. You saw that was in figure 1, and we received that on December 27th of last year. Then we talk about in our staff report on page 7, submissions for final plat review. We talk about final plat review. We have a number of findings. Madam Chair, we have a recommendation that we recommend you approve the final plat of Rose Minor Subdivision 71 with 2 conditions. One is The applicant shall provide all easements as requested by applicable utilities and special districts, irrigation districts, or public agencies providing services. The width of any utility easement shall be sufficient to allow adequate maintenance of the system, but in no case shall any such utility easement be less than 20 feet in width. Easements must be identified on the final plat, and I will say those easements, of course, are on the final plat. And our second recommended condition is the applicant shall otherwise comply with standards in the Park County Development Regulations and the minimum subdivision requirements set forth in Wyoming Statute 185306. And we're happy to answer questions should you have any.
Any questions, Mr. Delvin? Hearing none, with pleasure of the board.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the Rose Minor Subdivisions 71 final plat as presented with conditions.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the Rose Minor Subdivision number 71 final plat with conditions. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Subdivision is approved.
Like the surprise look.
Madam Chair, resolution 2024-02.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, commissioners.
We're a little ahead, but come on up.
We'll go again.
Always here to spend money.
Yeah.
Glad you make the numbers big enough to read.
Sure. Yes. Yeah. So.
Okay, the next thing on our agenda, Brian Edwards, Trapper County Engineer's Office, Public Works. Board bids for 2 dump trucks and 1 heavy haul tractor. We opened these a month ago, and you were doing review, so.
Yes, time flies. So, yeah, we'll start with the dump truck bids. As you said, Madam Chair, we did receive bids for 2 in dump trucks that are fully upfitted with boxes, sanders, and plows. We received bids from 3 different bidders with different options. So we had Peterbilt of Wyoming. They gave us a price with both an Ameritech upfit and a Coy Brothers upfit. Floyd's Truck Center gave us bids with J-Craft upfit, Ameritech upfit, and Coy Brothers upfit. And then McCandless Truck Center for the international trucks gave us a Coy Brothers upfit and Ameritech upfit. So as you can see, we've summarized everything together there. Bottom line, as far as like sticker price of the trucks, the Western Stars and the Internationals were pretty close as far as the sticker price of the new trucks. Floyd Center did offer quite a bit better trade-in for our used trucks, a lot better actually, as you can see there. So that was a big difference. Other thing, in looking at the Peterbilts, they offered a smaller horsepower engine that really didn't meet our specs there. So you can see that 380 horse. So I'm not sure what happened there. And whereas the International and the Western Star has the Detroit engine, International's that 825 liter engine, and then the Peterbilt is the PACCAR Cummins PX9 8.9 liters. So anyway, as far as trucks themselves, all were good other than meeting that horsepower spec for Peterbilt. So to us, we dive into the Western Stars from Floyd's because they are quite a bit less when you consider the trade and the other options. Then it gets down to what we want to do on the upfit. And historically, we have used Coy Brothers out of Billings or Ameritech out of Casper for the upfit. You know, we've had some issues with both. Both are in the process of making improvements to kind of fix some of those issues. But you can see there's about the Ameritech and Coy were very close together with a couple $100 and about $8,000 difference for the J Craft out of Minnesota. And we have called around. In fact, would heard the reason we considered them this time is I know Campbell County, Teton County, and a few others have used them before for upfits and have had good luck with them. So we'd like to give them a try and see if we can improve some of the issues that we've had with the other two. It is about an $8,000 difference, but you know, when you start talking downtime and repairs and things like that, you can spend that really quickly. So our recommendation for the dump trucks would be to purchase the 2 dump trucks with the J-Craft upfit for $486,922. That does include the warranty, which I wish I would have listed that warranty on there, but it's I didn't list it, but that warranty is included in the extended warranty, which I think I could probably look on this. It's the 5-year, 100,000 miles on the engine and after the engine, and then the after treatment, $810. But all that's in that price.
Okay. And they won't be delivered until April of 25.
Yeah, April of 2025. And you can see all of them were pretty far out with that.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to have to do some creative things with our budget to make sure we don't forget that. But
sure our clerk likes creative things.
Yeah. You're welcome, Colleen. That's the recommendation on that one. I didn't know if you want to do these separately, but I could
we can do those. Let's get the dump trucks done. Pleasure of the board.
Madam Chair, I recommend that we award the bid for the 2 dump trucks with Lloyd's Truck Center with with J Craft for the $486,922.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to accept the bids from Floyd's Truck Center with the J Craft upfit for $486,922. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So the next item was the heavy haul tractor. Obviously, we use these to haul, whether it's belly dumps and low boys to haul heavy equipment around. So this is a pretty important machine to our fleet. We use these for as long as we can. We'll try to get at least 400,000 or 500,000 miles out of them. So it's a pretty important expenditure for us. We did receive bids for from 3 different bidders for heavy haul tractors. We did offer a used option to where somebody could submit a 2020 or later, was it, Trap? 2020 2022 with 250,000 miles or less. And we got one bid that from Peterbilt of Wyoming, which didn't really meet that spec. It was a 2017 and had 450,000 miles. So we kind of threw that one out. But looking at the new trucks, and we've looked ourselves online, and it seems like if you get a good one, they're snapped away pretty quickly on the used. So we received bids from Peterbilt of Wyoming, Floyd's Truck Center, and McCandless Truck Center. Peterbilt is Peterbilt of Wyoming is a Peterbilt truck, model 567. The Floyd's Truck Center is a Western Star, model 449X. And the McCandless Truck Center is an international model HK 620. The thing about these that's a little bit interesting is because of the horsepower required for this for heavy haul truck, all three of these basically have the upsized, have the engine. That's the same engine, which is a Cummins engine. You can see that down a little bit lower on the deal, but they all basically have the same engine. They basically have the same transmission, Eaton transmission. So essentially with the trucks, it's basically the frame and the chassis and the things that basically make the truck. Mechanically, they're going to be very similar. I will say in terms of, you can see the prices in red up there on top, no trade in on this. We will end up selling one outright that we've got a tractor, which it's a long story why we didn't include that in this, but it was in the shop and broke down. So we're going a different route. We're just going to sell it or auction it, I'll say. Anyway, so with the prices that were submitted, some things you see that we're recommending going with the Peterbilt to Wyoming truck, which is about $12,000 or $20,000 more expensive. Is that right? Close enough. 1820. Some of the advantages, the warranty's a little better on the Peterbilt. It's 5-year, 200,000 miles, which and then the other thing, and you see that on the Western Star, they don't offer that remote diagnostics, only on the Detroit engine. So that's something where we could get it on the other two. Towing coverage was a little less expensive also. So those were advantages. The other thing was being able to get the truck sooner. You can see we can get that May 2024, which is really not bad in today's truck climate, whereas the others are, the Western Star would be December 31st, and we'd be in February 25 on the international. So all things considering, talking to the guys, I mean, the Western Stars have been good to us. We've used them a lot over the past years, bought several of them. We've also had good luck with the Peterbilt, really good luck in terms of holding value. Some of the older, like the Peterbilt versus the Western Stars and even the internationals, the Peterbilt seem to hold their value a little better. The Western Star is a newer model, and I think even the international is a newer model as well. So it's kind of hard to compare that apples and apples. It's just they're a bit of an unknown right now in terms of longevity and problems and resale value and things like that. Bottom line is, talking to the guys, they would prefer to have the Peterbilt truck. They think long term it will be a better option for the county, and that we think we could make that up on resale and probably less issues with other things. But that would be our recommendation, the Peterbilt.
Questions for Brian or Commissioner?
Question and also a statement. I think I like the recommendation. I know it's a little bit more money, 18,000, but I think you can obviously, if you look under bid for used trucks on that, they were the only ones that put in that didn't really quite fit our requirement. But you're looking at a 6-year-old truck with the 450,000 miles, which is where we trade them in, and they're asking 155,000 because it's a Peterbilt. They do hold their value much better. I think in the long run, we're going to get all of that little $18,000 extra, the savings coming back. I'm saying I'm supporting this. I'm not moving to emotions quite yet because of my question. What is the towing coverage under the option, and have we ever used it?
We started doing that 2 or 3 years ago, and it's where we've had issues is they always, all the warranties, and this is engine or whatever, it's the warranties at the place. If they could fix it at our shop's good, no charges there. But if it has to go into one of their shops, it's the warranty is for at their place of business. So which would be Casper, Billings, or whatever. So sometimes you're left with getting the truck there, and we've had to. Sometimes we've worked things where we split it with people. Floyd's has been good, but that's always kind of that issue. Whereas you can pay, and it's really not that much. You pay that a little bit, and it's up to $1,800 because it's expensive to tow something, but up to $1,800 a time per year, I think it is. You know, and you can see the Western Star was 7 years, the other one's 6 years. It just kind of takes that out as a lot of times we can haul it down, you know, so we've done that, but sometimes you can't, or if you're in the middle of nowhere. We had a truck breakdown in Casper. Remember that? Where was, I forget what they're doing. But I don't remember, but anyway, it happens.
I just. I mean, is that's a requirement for, they all offer it? I
Yeah,
just-
they all.
in the past, I don't remember us using it, but I'm not in
I
there every day.
I
to
probably
day.
haven't
And what
mentioned it.
trucks we have had broken, it just seems to me that we've always hauled them.
We have hauled them a lot, but if they're broke down to where, you know, where they're not running, say, or we can't get them up on a load or something, you know, where they're that bad, that's where that would come into play. It has happened since I've been
Okay,
here.
as long as
but
it's
yeah.
for you.
Yeah, and I just thought for the dollars that if it happens one time, you know, a couple times you're already got your money back. And like I say, people we've had have worked with us. I don't know, like with Peterbilt, whether they would honor it or not. In other words, where we'd split that cost. You see what I'm saying? So this just takes that out of it, and we're, you know, covered.
Any other
Madam
questions?
Chair, I move that we approve the bid from Peterbilt of Wyoming for the heavy haul trailer in the amount of $212,974.
Tractor.
Yeah. Do I have a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the purchase of heavy haul truck from Peterbilt of Wyoming in the amount of $212,974. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion passes.
I promise we won't spend any more money in 2023.
Thank you.
In 23, I heard that. I heard that.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, the next appointment, or the next thing on our agenda is Park County Historical Preservation Committee appointment. And I think you all remember that last month we interviewed Dan Shine, actually for a different position, but he is also interested in serving on the Park County Preservation District, our board, where we need several people. So he's agreed to do that. So we brought his application back under this scenario and would like approval from the board to approve him to be on that board.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve Daniel Shine to the Park County Historical Preservation Committee.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve Dan Shine appointment to the Park County Historical Preservation Committee. Any further discussion?
I just want to confirm that we do have more than one opening
Oh,
on that. Because I see the next item is, so
An
we're
interview.
interviewing somebody. Okay.
Right. Yeah, there's several openings. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion passes. Molly, you will let him know. Thank you. Okay. Then we have about 5 minutes and then we will be doing an interview with Miranda Bickford for the Park County Historic Preservation Commission. Committee. Okay. I guess we have a few minutes. We could do the last thing on the agenda.
Let's
because
do.
It's not gonna take public. So the last thing on the agenda is a designation of the official newspapers of Park County for the year 2024. As you know, at the current time, I think we actually use both. And the newspapers have been very good about making an agreement. We all know how expensive it is, and we know we're required to print our minutes, and those run thousands of dollars every month. So the newspapers have been good about kind of splitting those costs for us, kind of a 50-50 deal. So.
Madam Chair, we went through that last year and
Mhm.
looked for cost savings. We really didn't find any. So I would make a motion to approve the Powell Tribune and the Cody Enterprise as our official newspapers for Park County.
Second,
Is that you?
yeah.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the Powell Tribune and Cody Enterprise jointly as official newspapers for Park County for 2024. Correct. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes.
Did Lee vote?
He's not in, so. Okay. You- Yes, you kind of do. Okay, so we'll just wait and see if Miranda must be coming in the door. Okay. Hi, Miranda. You're welcome to come up to the table, please, on the microphone. Just so that you're aware, our meetings are zoomed, and so this is public, but we just like to ask you a few questions. Appreciate you applying for a position on the Historic Preservation Committee. First of all, let's just start a little bit with why you're interested, a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so my name is Miranda and I'm the new collections manager at the Heart Mountain Interpretive Center. And so I actually moved here all the way from Tulsa, Oklahoma in May after I finished my graduate degree in museum studies. And then I'm originally from Joplin, Missouri, but I really want to get involved with the community just because we've been here since May and there hasn't been a lot for me that I feel like I could really dig my hands into. So I really wanted to give back. And I know that Heart Mountain's done a lot of work with you guys, and I'd like to be able to continue our work and follow in Dakota's footsteps and be able to help with that.
Okay, appreciate that. So questions?
Madam Chair, Miranda, thanks for applying. You were recommended by Brian. Did he explain the meetings and such to you?
He emailed us and he basically explained it's like a once a month meetings, and I kind of looked online what you guys had and things like that, but he kind of gave a light description of what all would entail.
Just a light description.
Yeah.
Obviously you certainly qualified for something like this if you're working over the interpretive center. Glad that you applied.
Thanks.
Questions?
I'm sure. Randy, you said you graduated with what, a degree?
So I graduated from the University of Tulsa with my master's in museum studies and management. Basically, I specialized in collections management, which is dealing with all like the objects, but also I trained a lot with CRM, a lot of dealing with what am I trying to say, like historic buildings and things like that, and how the TIPO and SHPO work with museums and historic sites like that, as well as I worked a lot with Gilcrease Museum, which is a large museum in Tulsa. It's currently under construction, building their new building, but I did a lot of with indigenous artifacts and things like that.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I don't have any questions. Thank you for applying. I think you were more than qualified. I mean, you only have 7 months in Wyoming, but you have a background and education to go for that. Welcome.
Thanks.
Miranda, have you sat on committees and boards before?
Not within like a city environment or a county environment, but I have with smaller realms. I was very involved with my national sorority and did national committees on that and helped lead some of those events. And though, as I did a lot with my colleges as well.
Okay. You mentioned SHPO, so you know that some of what the work they do and maybe applications or grant application type things are involved in this group.
Mhm.
So keeping track of that's kind of important. And especially when the clerk comes in to audit things, we have to take a look at everything.
Yes.
So tracking is important. So no, I appreciate you applying, and obviously you're qualified for the position.
I'm thinking out loud. It's something that gets me in trouble, you know, a lot, but if you're appointed, you mentioned that you're employed by the Heart Mountain Interpretive Center.
Yeah.
As they move in as a committee and they apply for grants, I would just suggest you be careful of conflict of interest there. If you were ever, you know, you may want to exclude yourself from voting if you keep an eye open for that. That's the only,
Definitely.
We did have that scenario with Dakota Eldridge at times,
Yeah.
because he was the manager there for quite a while and he kind of worked everything out pretty well. So I think it's certainly possible.
And I can always talk with him and see how
Okay.
he dealt with that.
Okay. Any other questions? Thoughts? Do you have any questions for us?
I kind of didn't know what I was getting myself into in this meeting, but I guess with it's called an advisory committee. So does that mean we advise the county commissioners is what I'm assuming,
Mhm.
but then all of like the main decisions are through them as well, so you guys?
Normally we are the ones that have to sign the things to
Okay,
SHPO,
that
but
makes
through advisory.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That was really my only thing. I wanted to clarify that because I'd seen somewhere is just commission and somewhere is advisory.
Right.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Madam Chair, we've appointed Dan earlier
Mhm.
and we still have one more opening.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Madam Chair, I will move to appoint Randa Bickford to our Park County Historical Preservation Commission.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to appoint Miranda Beckford to the Park County Preservation Commission. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. So with that, if you'd like to get back in touch with Brian and see when the next meeting is, and I'm sure he can get you caught up.
Okay, thank you guys so
So,
much.
All right, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks for applying. Okay.
Madam Chair, I move to adjourn. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, guys.
Nobody opposed?
No. Not sure you even have to ask on that one.
I have no idea.
Did you second that or did you second that?
Gossip, you know.